Oysters. Collision! Collision!
China has warned the Philippines not to stir up conflict in the South China Sea.
China seeks to intimidate you in your own waters. We've all seen the videos and pictures of water cannons and ship-to-ship collisions and illegal boardings at sea.
Water cannons today, missiles tomorrow. When Chinese Coast Guard ships blasted Philippine vessels with water cannons near the Second Thomas Shoal, it wasn't just a clash over coral reefs. It was a warning shot in a high-stakes game of power. Now, the United States is answering. In a move that's rattling Beijing and reshaping the Indo-Pacific, Washington has secured expanded military access to 4 more bases in the Philippines, some within striking distance of Taiwan and the South China Sea.
We are watching very closely China's destabilizing actions. And any unilateral attempt to change the status quo in the South China Sea and the first island chain by force or coercion is unacceptable. China's military harasses Taiwan. These activities have been paired with China's rapid military modernization and buildup.
The Pentagon watched China, its greatest geopolitical rival of the 21st century, build the largest navy in the world. China has threatened to use that navy to invade Taiwan.
This isn't just base building, it's battle positioning. The US-China rivalry is no longer a slow-boiled diplomatic contest. It's a full-blown strategic arms reach, playing out in contested waters and disputed skies. From fighter jet close calls to maritime harassment, the South China Sea is turning into a powder keg.
The U.S. military has released video of yet another Chinese fighter jet harassing and flying dangerously close to a U.S. military plane. Officials say this happened over the South China Sea.
And now, with America stepping up its military presence, the region teeters between deterrence and danger. Once the site of America's largest overseas bases during the Cold War, the Philippines is back in the center of geopolitical gravity. Its location isn't just important, it's irreplaceable. Bordering key sea lanes close to Taiwan and directly in China's strategic line of sight, the Philippines has become the launch pad for Washington's Indo-Pacific push, bound by a decades-old mutual defense treaty. The U.S.'s deepened military footprint under EDCA signals a tectonic shift in regional power. It's designed to deter Chinese aggression, fortify alliances, and secure vital sea routes. But it also brings the front lines of the U.S.-China rivalry dangerously close. What was once a quiet strategic partnership has become a front line of confrontation, and the world is watching.
U.S. Warship 114, this is Chinese 164. You are crossing my bow. Falsely, it's interfering my safety.
The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement is not just a military pact. It's a calculated strategic comeback. Originally signed in 2014, EDCA allows the United States rotational access to selected Philippine military bases, not to build permanent outposts, but to stage forces, preposition equipment, and conduct joint exercises. Think of it as a force multiplier for both humanitarian missions and regional deterrence. In a region where seconds matter, EDCA gives Washington a frontline perch and gives Manila a stronger backbone in asserting its sovereignty. Whether it's responding to natural disasters or countering gray zone tactics in the South China Sea, EDCA is fast becoming the centerpiece of a revived U.S.-Philippines security alliance. To understand its weight, we need to rewind the clock. For nearly a century, the Philippines was America's strongest military hub in Asia. The massive U.S. bases at Subic Bay and Clark Air Base symbolized American dominance in the Pacific, until nationalist outrage and sovereignty debates forced their closure in 1991. That exit marked the end of an era, until now. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., history is taking a sharp turn. Faced with growing Chinese aggression, especially near Philippine-claimed areas like the Spratlys and Second Thomas Shoal, Manila is once again opening its doors.
Our foundations are strong for the U.S.-Philippine alliance, which is of critical importance.
In 2023, the Marcos administration expanded EDCA to include 4 new sites, strategically scattered across northern Luzon, near Taiwan, and Palawan, near the South China Sea. It's not just nostalgia, it's a necessity. This new chapter of defense cooperation is built on urgency. With Chinese vessels swarming Philippine waters and gray zone tactics escalating, EDCA offers Manila both a safety net and a signal. It is no longer standing alone. For Washington, it's a quiet but powerful repositioning, one that brings U.S. forces closer to flashpoints, tightens the noose on Chinese strategic mobility, and makes the Philippines a linchpin in the Indo-Pacific power game. The expansion of EDCA isn't just about numbers, it's about where and why. Among the most consequential additions is the Naval Detachment Oyster Bay in Palawan. Once a quiet outpost, it's rapidly transforming into a critical maintenance and logistics hub for both Philippine and U.S. unmanned surface vessels, USVs. From this vantage point, American and Filipino forces can monitor and respond to activities in the contested Spratly Islands within hours, not days. Armed with cutting-edge platforms like the Devil Ray T-38 and Mantis T-12, this base doesn't just defend, it sees, predicts, and warns. The result? A 24/7 watchtower pointed squarely at China's maritime maneuvers. Beyond Palawan, the total number of EDCA sites has jumped to 9, with the newest locations in northern Luzon, just a few hundred kilometers from Taiwan. This isn't coincidence, it's strategic choreography. As noted by renowned news agencies, the U.S. will upgrade a Philippine military base crucial for Manila's South China Sea operations. These sites give U.S. forces agility in 2 simultaneous flashpoints, Taiwan and the South China Sea, turning the Philippines into a potential staging ground in the Indo-Pacific's next crisis. From Beijing's perspective, the message is clear and it's not welcome. China sees the expanded EDCA footprint as part of a broader American strategy of containment, reminiscent of Cold War encirclement tactics. The Chinese embassy in Manila condemned the agreement outright, claiming it escalates tensions and undermines regional peace. This isn't just diplomatic pushback, it's a warning flare that the great power rivalry is moving closer to China's front door. Beijing's posture is rooted in its 9-dash line, a sweeping claim that swallows nearly the entire South China Sea, overlapping with the territories of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and others. At the heart of this tension lies the Spratly Islands, especially hotspots like Sandy Cay near Thitu Island, where Chinese forces continue to construct military outposts and deploy Coast Guard vessels. These aren't defensive moves, they're strategic encroachments. China's so-called gray zone tactics make the situation even murkier. Civilian fishing boats, maritime militia swarms, and Coast Guard ships operate in tandem to push boundaries without firing a shot. One chilling example, over 190 suspected militia vessels loitering near Whitsun Reef, silently testing the region's will. It's a slow, methodical game of dominance, played just beneath the threshold of open conflict. China hasn't stayed silent. Through official channels and state media, it has ramped up its escalatory rhetoric, accusing the U.S. and the Philippines of provocation and regional destabilization.
美菲间任何合作都不应该针对第三方或者损害第三方的利益，更不应该渲染所谓威胁、挑动对抗、加剧地区的紧张。我想强调的是，南海的航行和飞越自由从来都不存在任何问题。
This strategic signaling, captured in reports by modern diplomacy, makes one thing clear. The Indo-Pacific isn't just heating up, It's starting to boil. Supporters of EDCA argue that expanded U.S. presence brings much-needed balance to a region tilted by Chinese aggression. The goal is simple: deterrence. By strengthening U.S.-Philippine defense ties, both nations aim to safeguard freedom of navigation, ensure rapid disaster response, and build a collective security framework in Southeast Asia. But beneath this logic lies a darker undertone: the risk of a miscalculation spiral. As both sides increase their military presence and ramp up their rhetoric, the margin for error shrinks. A close encounter between naval vessels, a misread radar signal, a spark in a crowded sea. The Carnegie Endowment warns bluntly, hostility has reached a level that makes war thinkable, and perhaps even likely within the next decade. This is no longer theoretical. It's dangerously real.
You are approaching China's territorial waters. Please state your intention.
Then comes the Taiwan factor, adding fuel to an already raging fire.
Another round of Chinese war games near Taiwan has the U.S. and other nations concerned.
EDCA sites in northern Luzon now place U.S. forces within striking range of Taiwan, a potential rear base in the event of a cross-strait crisis. While this boosts American strategic depth, it also drags the Philippines closer to a conflict it may not want. Analysts from the Quincy Institute urge restraint, cautioning that Manila could become entangled in a U.S.-China confrontation over Taiwan, whether it wants to or not. The Indo-Pacific is not just witnessing a superpower standoff, it's also fueling a regional arms buildup that could spiral into a full-blown arms race. Across Southeast Asia, nations are rapidly modernizing their militaries, driven by the fear of abandonment, the assertiveness of China, and the urgency to close capability gaps. The Philippines, once considered militarily modest, is now making bold moves. A $35 billion modernization plan that includes acquiring BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles from India and U.S.-supplied Typhoon precision strike systems capable of hitting targets up to 1,600 kilometers away. These aren't symbolic purchases. They're real tools of deterrence and potentially escalation. But modernization is not just about defense, it's about fear. Fear that without a strong U.S. presence, the region could fall into a strategic vacuum where bolder actors rewrite the rules. As the Nikkei Policy Institute notes, the prospect of a U.S. retrenchment haunts policymakers from Manila to Hanoi. Without Washington's balancing weight, Southeast Asian states may feel forced to arm faster, strike harder, and trust less. What begins as modernization could easily slide into mistrust-fueled militarization, an arms race that raises costs for everyone and security for no one. Even as tensions surge and weapon systems multiply, many regional leaders know that lasting peace won't come from deterrence alone. It must be built through dialogue. But therein lies a central challenge: trust or the lack of it. Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro has made it clear that one of the greatest roadblocks to progress is a deep-rooted distrust of Beijing's intentions. Years of Chinese provocations in Philippine waters, masked as civilian or maritime law enforcement actions, have eroded any foundation for genuine negotiation. As Teodoro bluntly put it, trust is the first casualty in these waters. Recognizing the razor-thin line between competition and confrontation, global security experts have called for a revitalized U.S.-China military dialogue.
And thus, for dialogue to be effective, it must be coupled with trust. And China has a lot of trust building to do to be an effective negotiating partner in dispute settlement. We have to call a spade a spade. And that's what we see, and that is the biggest stumbling block to dispute resolution or dialogue with China. That deficit of trust.
Think tanks like the Crisis Group emphasize that direct, reliable communication between top commanders could prevent misunderstandings from escalating into tragedy. In contested zones like the South China Sea, one misinterpreted maneuver could mean a regional catastrophe. Meanwhile, Southeast Asia walks a tightrope. Countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia are pursuing a careful balancing act, economically intertwined with China while leaning on the United States for security guarantees. As noted by the Asia Foundation, ASEAN nations are not choosing sides. They are choosing stability, but their room to maneuver is shrinking as the US-China rivalry intensifies. For diplomacy to work, all sides must recognize that regional peace is not a zero-sum game. It's a shared necessity. The Indo-Pacific has become a crucible of 21st century geopolitics, a volatile theater where great power ambitions, regional anxieties, and historic fault lines are converging at alarming speed. From the contested reefs of the South China Sea to the shadow of a potential Taiwan crisis, the stakes are no longer abstract, they are dangerously real. As military maneuvers intensify and alliances harden, the region teeters on the edge of what can only be called an unstable equilibrium. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement stands as both shield and sword in this shifting landscape. On one hand, it reinforces deterrence, giving the Philippines a stronger voice and presence in its own backyard. On the other, it pushes the strategic temperature higher, raising the risks of miscalculation, misunderstanding, and even open conflict. Every new deployment, every patrol, every flashpoint interaction carries with it the potential to ignite something far more dangerous. And yet, war is not inevitable. The region still holds the tools to steer away from disaster, but only if diplomacy is pursued with as much urgency as defense. Crisis hotlines, confidence-building measures, and consistent dialogue must match the pace of weapons modernization and base expansion. Southeast Asia doesn't need to choose between China and the US. It needs to choose stability over escalation, sovereignty over subjugation, and balance over brinkmanship. The path forward is narrow but clear. The Indo-Pacific's future hinges on finding that delicate midpoint between military preparedness and diplomatic restraint, between deterrence and dialogue. Thank you for tuning into our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.